So, every year we do this little presentation. I've been doing this presentation for a long time, not just here at St. Joe, but other places. And I wish I could say that I change it every year and spruce it up. I always have plans to do that, but Lent is kind of a busy season for priests, and so I end up not ever sprucing it up. So this is, I changed the date, and that's about it. So I'm going to turn off the lights up here so that you can see better, but I will actually have you answer some questions at the beginning. So if you need light to write, I can turn it back on. Okay.
In the back of your notebooks, you should have notebook paper to write on, possibly.
You're going to want to write because there's going to be a gift or a prize. So anybody who needs paper.
How many? 1, 2, 3, 4,
Bruce is apparently 5.
Mine's sitting right next. Thank you.
I got pins. I can wear them back to the
Okay, so we're gonna we do this talk. I do this talk every year because for those of us who are Catholic and have been through a lot of Holy Weeks, we're like, yeah, we do Palm Sunday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and you know, it just becomes kind of something that we just know really well. But for someone who might be new to the church, some of this stuff is going to be like, why are we doing this? What is this? This is kind of confusing. I really wish someone would have told me what we're doing beforehand so that I can enter into it fully. And so that's part of the reason why we have this presentation. But what you're going to see is that I'm going to use maps and pictures, photos that I've taken from the Holy Land. And so the desire is to not just give you an idea of, okay, this is what happened on Holy Thursday, this is what happened on Good Friday, but to actually maybe give you some sense of what it kind of looked like and what it was like to move from one place to the other and everything. Maybe you'll be like, wow, that was a complete waste of my time. But I think that it is helpful for you to, as you enter into Holy Week. So I actually will do this presentation for the parish, anybody who wants to. And it's funny, every year I have people who come back. I'm like, this is the same presentation as last year. But they come back anyway. So, but we do that during Holy Week. But you're getting it beforehand so that the whole of Holy Week can be something that you can enter into. But what I like to do at the beginning is to see how much you already know, okay? So I'm going to ask 15 questions, and you can write out the answers. And then at the end, we're going to go through the answers, and you're going to tally up how you did. And I've got some prizes, and there are two categories. There's the folks who are candidates and catechumens, and then folks who are in the on the team, like they're a sponsor or whatever. Like it's not fair to compare you to each other because some people, you know, the Catholics hopefully should know most of these answers already. Okay, so you ready to answer some questions? Yeah, or not? You know, okay. So here we go. Yeah.
Can you see your paper?
Holy Week, Jesus' week, and the church's Holy Week. Okay, so just to give you a heads up, these are the big days of Holy Week: Palm Sunday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Vigil, which is going to be a big one for all of you, and then Easter. Okay, we're going to go through all those. So let's answer some questions first. Okay, so number one, and when there are multiple questions within a question, each of those gets a point. Okay? So you may not get all of the points for a question, but you could get some of the points. So, number one, the first Holy Week, Jesus' actual Holy Week, took place in what present-day city, country, and continent?
count off for spelling.
Yep. No, you're scoring your own, so it's you count out for spelling. Number 2. Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey on which day of Holy Week? What valley did Jesus cross to get from the Mount of Olives to Jerusalem? Toonie, stop giving him answers.
Do your own.
4. 3 oils are blessed at the Chrism Mass. What is each oil called?
And 3 of you volunteered to carry these up.
Yeah, you get extra credit if you can place the names of the people with the oils that they're carrying. Number 5. What is added to the oil of chrism? So we may have just given away an answer to the previous question, okay? And blessing is not the question, not the answer, okay? Something other besides the blessing. Number 6. Which 4 sacraments use at least one of the oils blessed at the Chrism Mass? Number 7. Who renews commitments during the Chrism Mass? Okay, so there are four answers on this one. Who renews commitments during the Chrism Mass? And what are the 3 promises this group of people make on their big days?
Jenny, are you looking up the answers on internet?
I can't give you an answer.
Number 8. What sacraments were instituted in the upper room? Which sacraments were instituted in the upper room? And I'll give you a hint, there are 4 of them. Really? Okay. Can I go on to the next slide? Anyone still need a little more time? Right, silence is consent. So number 9, which sacraments were instituted on Holy Thursday? I'm sorry that all the sacraments are lowercase. I really should be. But number 10, who betrayed Jesus? And where did that betrayal happen? Not the gospel, the place. Number 11, who is the high priest during the year Jesus is killed? In the parlor.
You're spelling everything.
Number 12. Which Holy Week liturgy begins with the priest lying face down on the floor and not because he has tripped? It's an intentional thing. He also takes off his shoes at this liturgy. I take off my shoes, thank you very much. Well, maybe I haven't presided at the ones you've gone to.
You take your socks off?
No, just shoes. Okay, number 13. What Roman leader condemned Jesus to death? And in what building did this happen? And hopefully you'll get number 14. If not, we might need to talk. On what day do catechumens and candidates receive the sacraments of initiation? And finally, what is the name of the church over both the spot where Jesus died and the spot where Jesus rose from the dead? There's one church that covers those 2 places. And finally, in case we need a tiebreaker, on what day, month, date, and year did Archbishop Naumann go from being the coadjutor, so the helping bishop, to the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Kansas City in Kansas. I'll give you a hint. It's the same day that I picked up my application for seminary. Doesn't that help? It does. You're like, oh, I know that day. All right, got it. Thanks.
What's your mom's phone number?
Okay. What's my mom's phone number? Yeah. That will not help you, I will tell you that right now. Okay, anybody need those anymore? Ready to learn the answers?
Sure.
She said it with confidence, yeah. Okay. All right, so, answer to the first question.
Yep.
Jerusalem, Israel, Asia.
Yay, we got one.
Yeah. Awesome. That's three, actually.
Woohoo.
3 points. Okay.
Well, it's all downhill from here.
Yeah. So, let's just get a little lay of the land of Israel, okay? So, to the west is the Mediterranean Sea. So Israel is on the eastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea. It's yeah. And it's pretty hilly, mountainous. So the mountains climb from the Mediterranean, and then they drop down to the Jordan River. And the Jordan River flows from the north to the south. In the north is the Sea of Galilee. And actually there are three sources of the Sea of Galilee further north. One of them is in the city of Caesarea Philippi. Interesting. And then flows down into the Sea of Galilee, and then flows out of the Sea of Galilee through the Jordan River down to the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is 1,300 feet below sea level. So the towns that are right by the Dead Sea are actually the lowest on the face of the earth. And Jericho is anyway. So that it's the lowest spot on the face of the earth, 1,300 feet below sea level. So if you think about it, the water flows into it, and if it's the lowest spot on the face of the earth, that water can't go anywhere, right? So the water sits in there, it evaporates, and any sort of salt content of that water stays in the Dead Sea. And when that's happened for lots of years, it just gets saltier and saltier. So the reason it's called the Dead Sea is because it's too salty for anything to live in it. It's also, because it's so salty, very buoyant, and so like if you can't really like drown yourself in it, because you'll like go down and it's just going to pop you right back up. Okay, so if you go up 4,000 feet about from the Dead Sea straight to the west rather, you're going to hit the city of Jerusalem. South of Jerusalem is this town of Bethlehem. And then about 60 miles north is the city of Nazareth. Okay? So Jesus was born down here, went to the temple here, was presented in the temple, came over here to Egypt, and then they came back up here to Nazareth where he grew up. Okay? All right, so in the first century Jerusalem, we have the city of Jerusalem. Okay? So these black lines are the walls of the city of Jerusalem. In 70 AD, the city of Jerusalem was surrounded by the Romans, and they just kind of waited them out and then eventually destroyed the city, including the temple. Okay? These walls here are what the city was in 70 AD. Okay? But in Jesus' time, 30 to 33 AD, it was more like this. Okay? And that's going to be important because when we talk about where Jesus was crucified and died, it's outside of the city walls, but it's inside of these city walls. Okay? So, what do we have here? We've got the temple is here. The upper room is down here. House of Caiaphas, Herod's palace. We're going to come back to all of those things. But that's the first century Jerusalem. Okay, so the first day of Holy Week is Palm Sunday. There's Pope Francis. I'm sure he did that all by himself. On Palm Sunday, if you haven't been to Palm Sunday before, you're going to get, what do you think?
A palm.
Palm, not a palm tree, but you will get palms. And those palms will be blessed, and then you can maybe put those up in your house throughout the year as a reminder of Palm Sunday. And then, come next Ash Wednesday, in theory, you would burn the palms, and those ashes would then be used for the ashes of Ash Wednesday. And that we do use ashes from palms on Ash Wednesday. It's extremely hard to burn palms, and so we don't do the burning and like burn last year's palms. But that is how the cycle works. Like that's how the church recycles, is that she uses palms. So Palm Sunday is one of the it's a great day. Okay. So it's on Palm Sunday that Jesus enters into the city of Jerusalem. And you're going to see this guy in a few of the pictures, and I apologize for that. But this is looking from the Mount of Olives across the Kidron Valley. Okay, so that's the valley that he crosses. But this is looking across, and there's the wall of the city of Jerusalem. Okay, and that is, what do you think that is?
The temple.
It's not the temple.
It's a mosque.
It's the Dome of the Rock. So it's a Muslim temple, and all of the Temple Mount, where the temple was built, is now owned and run by the Muslims. Jews don't even go up there, and Christians can go up there, but they can't bring Bibles with them. They got to be kind of judicious about what they do and say up there. So this is looking across. So Jesus gets to this point, he looks across, and he weeps for the city of Jerusalem. Down here, this is if you were looking down this way. So here's the city across the Kidron Valley, and then what do you think all those white boxes are? They're tombs. Yep. So it's hard to dig, and so they just bury them above ground. But why do you think they're here? It's on the eastern side of the city. So, they believe that the Messiah would come from the east. And just like the sun rises from the east, the Messiah would come from the east, and they wanted to be the first ones to welcome him. And so they wanted to be buried to the east so that they could welcome him coming into the city. There's more of them on the other side too. But, so Jesus is the Messiah, and he comes into Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, which is from the east. So he's fulfilling the prophecy that the Messiah would come
You
from
need
the
to
east.
introduce who's in the picture there.
If you don't know,
Who is that? He looks pretty young.
he does look young. That's true. He has more hair, and it's not great. Okay. There's a church over there called Dominus Flevit, which means the Lord wept, which is the shortest verse in all of Scripture. It's just 3 words, sorry. The Lord wept. And they designed it like a teardrop. That's why the shape is. And so when you're inside the church, you look out the window and you see the city of Jerusalem, to give you kind of a view of what Jesus would have seen. Obviously, that was not there because the temple was there. But anyway. Okay. So on Palm Sunday, he enters Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives. So this is the Mount of Olives over here, and he comes across the Kidron Valley into a gate here on the eastern side of the city. In Jerusalem, there is a scale model of Jerusalem in 70 AD. It was in a hotel, and then they put it into a park. And it was an archaeologist and an architect and historians that got together and they created this. So it's really incredible, and we're going to see lots of pictures of this because it just helps us. But to look from here, we're looking from, like if you're down here looking up, okay? So the Kidron Valley goes this way, and then the Valley of Hinnom, or the Gehenna Valley, goes this way. Gehenna, why does that sound familiar?
Isn't that what they call hell?
Yeah, Jesus refers to hell by referring to Gehenna. So what happened in Gehenna? The predecessors to the Jews who lived in the city of Jerusalem when it was much smaller, it wasn't called Jerusalem at the time, they sacrificed their children to their gods in that valley. The Jews are like, that's a problem. This place is cursed. And so instead of building in it and living in it, it was outside the city walls, and they would throw their trash in there, and then they would light the trash on fire. And it would just continuously burn. There'd just be this burning stench in there. So when Jesus refers to Gehenna, they immediately had this image of a place where innocence is lost, a valley, a low place, a place that's full of trash, full of garbage, and a place that's constantly burning. So it gives us a sense of what hell is, and it gave them a sense of that too. Okay? This building right here is this here, the temple. Okay? And then this little area down here is the lower city. That's about as big as Jerusalem was when David took over. When he conquered the city and then moved in there and brought the ark in there and everything. It wasn't very big, but there it is. It was kind of like a richer place. Some like palaces and stuff like that were in that area. Okay. All right. So what does he do during Holy Week between Palm Sunday and Holy Thursday? He teaches in the temple. Okay. So here's the temple. The temple took 46 years to build. It was a massive structure. It was one of the wonders of the ancient world. And it's built on a mount, so Jerusalem slopes from the north to the south. And so they had to build up these walls all along here just to make a flat plain. And the plain is like 30 football fields, something. It's enormous. And you would enter, there are two doors down here. You enter, you go up the stairs, and you pop out into this big courtyard, okay? So this courtyard and this courtyard are called the courtyard of the Gentiles, because anybody could go in there. And surrounding it is a portico, and Solomon's portico is one of those, and that's where Jesus would do some of his teaching, okay? Then you have this inner structure, which has an inner courtyard called the courtyard of the Jews. It's also the courtyard of the women, because they could go that far, but they couldn't go any further. And you would bring in your offering, you'd give it to the priest there, and then he would sacrifice it. And then inside the inner courtyard is the Holy of Holies. This is the Holy of Holies. It was a big structure. It had, at one point it had the ark in it that had the tablets from the Ten Commandments. It had Aaron's staff, and it had some bread, some of the manna that they preserved. Inside there was, it was very holy, and only the high priest went in there once a year to offer sacrifices on behalf of the people for the forgiveness of their sins. Okay, so this is the temple, and this is where Jesus would have taught during Holy Week. So this is a Lego version. Whoever did this is my hero, and this is amazing. So.
Tell him who did it. Tell him who did it.
I don't know who did it. I just found it on the internet.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, I did not do this.
Oh, I thought.
I'm not my own hero. Okay. Anyway, so during Holy Week, for us, on Tuesday we have a Chrism Mass. Okay? And it's during the Chrism Mass that the bishop blesses 3 oils. the oil of the catechumens, the oil of the sick, and chrism. The oil of the catechumens is used for baptisms. It's also the oil of salvation. And so it's used on the top of the chest plate. Okay? We don't always necessarily use it as part of an adult baptism, but when we do, yeah, we'll just put it on the, for those who are going to be baptized, we're going to put it on the top of the chest plate. The oil of the sick obviously is used when we go out to anoint someone who is sick. I just came from the hospital, I had 2 anointings there, and I used the oil of the sick that was blessed at last year's Chrism Mass. And then there's chrism. Chrism is used a lot, and it's going to be used for all of you, because it's used at baptisms, it's used as confirmations, it's used to bless new altars, and it's used to consecrate the hands of a priest. So the bishop, at my consecration, at my ordination, he poured chrism onto my hands and rubbed it in. And so the interesting thing, one of the interesting things about that is, first of all, they wrap your hands in a cloth called a maniturgium. And that cloth is then given to the mother of the priest. And when she's buried, in her coffin, they put that cloth. And the idea is that when she gets to heaven, when she gets to the pearly gates, she can hold the cloth up and say, I gave you a son to be a priest, so let me in. The father of the priest gets the stole that he used for his first confession. So both of them have these symbols that they can present to say, we offered up to you a son, so please take that into consideration for our salvation. So the other interesting thing is that when I anoint a priest who is sick, I don't anoint the palms of his hands because those have already been anointed. You flip his hands over and you anoint the backs of his hands. But any other person, I would anoint the palms of their hands and their forehead with the oil of the sick. Okay, so those are the 3 oils that get blessed at the Chrism Mass. What does the bishop add? He adds balsam. And balsam makes it smell really sweet. It also changes the color a little bit. So if we have any confusion, when we're looking at the oils and we're like, I don't know if there's oil of sick or oil of the chrism. Chrism's the one that's most important. And so we want it to stand out. And so we can look at the 3 oils and go, that one's chrism, because it smells different and it looks different. One of my friends, when he was ordained, he did not smell the balsam. And he's like, I don't think you used the right oil. So after his ordination, he asked the bishop if he would do that right again with the chrism, just to make sure that his ordination was valid. Okay. Okay, what are those used for? For sacraments, baptism, confirmation, anointing of the sick, and holy orders. Specifically for a priest and a bishop. The chrism is not used for the holy orders when it's a deacon. Okay. Who's the group that renews their promises? The priests. And what are those 3 promises? Celibacy, prayer, and obedience. Now, perhaps you might be thinking of a monk or a sister. They make vows of celibacy, obedience, and poverty. Priests don't make a promise of poverty, they make a promise of prayer. And that promise of prayer is that they will pray the liturgy of the hours, the 5 hours of the liturgy of the hours, every day. So every day I pray 5 different hours, because that was the promise that I made, both at my diaconate ordination and at my priestly ordination. But at the Chrism Mass, most of the priests come, or at least like 60 to 70 of them are there, and the bishop stands there and basically has them renew those promises. Kind of.
Quick
Yes, sir.
about that. you'll have to forgive me, I forget the name, but the priests that belong to the different orders, do they renew those specific orders at the same time?
They would, yeah, it's kind of a misnomer for me to say that we renew the promises. The bishop just asks us a bunch of questions, and they're kind of related to the promises, but we don't specifically renew those 3 promises. So yeah, there are religious order priests that come to the Chrism Mass, and they will just respond the same way. Because they're, in their ordination, they do, in their consecration as religious, they make the 3 promises. Or sorry, the 3 vows. But when they're ordained, they make those promises. Okay, good question. All right, so the first day of the Triduum is Holy Thursday. Okay, and there's a picture of Pope Francis very early on in his pontificate when he went to a prison and washed the feet of the prisoners. So it's on Holy Thursday that a lot of things happen. One of which is the washing of the feet. Jesus washes the feet of his apostles, and then he tells them to go and do likewise. So we, at Holy Thursday Mass, we have 12 people, and I will wash their feet, or wash at least one of their feet, as part of that, just as a reminder to us, like, this is what Jesus did. This is how he served his apostles. And the 12, well, I don't have time to go into this too much, but if you're interested in the seating order for the Last Supper, you can go to our YouTube page, and there's a video that I did. It's like 30 minutes long, I will warn you, but it explains where at least Jesus, John, Judas, and Peter sat at the Last Supper. And Peter sat in the spot where the servant would sit, which is appropriate because the bishop, the pope, is called the servant to the servants. So the bishops are the servants, and the pope is the servant to the servants. Okay? Okay. So on Holy Thursday, the Last Supper happened in the upper room. And this is the location of the upper room in Jerusalem. So it would have been down here in one of these buildings. These red roof buildings here, those would have been more expensive, and those would have been for the priests. Because back then the priests made the money. Things have changed since then, but anyway, the upper room is down here. It was a 2-story building, and it was someone who knew Jesus, and he asked if they could use that room, because over 1 million people were probably in Jerusalem on Holy Thursday, because they're all there for the Passover. And you don't like come and have the lamb sacrifice and then you take it back to your hometown and eat it there. You need to eat it and have that meal in Jerusalem. So all over the city of Jerusalem that night, people are celebrating the Passover. Okay, there is a church. Okay, so it's just would have been in a building that kind of looked like this, one of those buildings there. And there's a gate down there called the Gate of the Essenes. And it's believed that John the Baptist was one of the Essenes, which were kind of like Jewish monks. And so Jesus probably had some connection with them too. Okay, so now there is a church there, a chapel, that looks like this. For those of you who are architecture buffs, you'll go like, that wouldn't have been what the room looked like. No, because this is Gothic architecture, which was from the 1100s. The Crusaders built this because the original room was burned, and so they built this chapel in that spot. But if you go there as a priest, you kind of renew your priestly promises, especially if your bishop is with you. Okay, so in the upper room, the 4 sacraments were holy orders, Eucharist, reconciliation, and confirmation. And the 2 that happened on Holy Thursday were Holy Orders and the Eucharist. All right, so after the Last Supper, they make their way maybe through the city over here to the Garden of Gethsemane, which is on the Mount of Olives. Again, they're going back over the Kidron Valley. Okay? And this is looking from the north of the city of Jerusalem across the Kidron Valley to the Mount of Olives. And there's this church down here. It's got these domes on it. It's called the Church of All Nations. And it's called the Church of All Nations because several nations donated to building it. And so each of those domes is over a little chapel for each of the countries that donated. Okay. Inside that particular chapel, that church, is an altar that's over rock. So the base of the altar is just like uneven rock. And the belief is that is where Jesus had his agony. That's where he prayed. And there's a mosaic on the back wall of Jesus praying. But you can go inside this, past this wall inside there, and you can touch that rock. And that was, I've been to the Holy Land twice, and that was a very powerful moment to just think like, trying to get into Jesus' prayer on Holy Thursday, because it was super, super powerful. Outside is a garden with olive trees. So this tree was planted by Pope Paul VI in the 60s. So that would have been about 50 years old when I took that picture, okay? This is an olive tree as well. So what an olive tree does is it grows by sending down shoots on the outside edge, and that creates a ring. And then the next set sets down roots, and it keeps shoots, and it just kind of grows as a ring. The inner part of it dies, and then it just creates this big ring of a church, or ring of a tree. So this tree, you could actually probably walk inside of it, because it's just a big circle. That tree is really old. I thought, oh man, maybe this was around at the time of Jesus. But then someone explained to me later